The scent of vampire blood called to me like a siren song, threading through the smoky air of the Crimson Court's underground sanctuary. I pressed my back against the stone wall, fighting the hunger that clawed at my insides. 3 weeks. 3 weeks since Lyra vanished from our cottage, leaving only drops of her blood on the floorboards and the lingering scent of death magic. My fingers traced the obsidian blade hidden beneath the silk of my courtesan's gown. The Crimson Order thought they'd invited a plaything into their den of predators. They had no idea they'd welcomed their executioner. "You smell different." The voice slid over my skin like velvet dipped in poison. I turned slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs as Lord Aric Nerezza emerged from the shadows. Even among vampires, he was breathtaking. 6 feet of lethal grace wrapped in midnight dark hair and eyes like winter storms. His presence filled the corridor, making the air itself thicken. I lowered my lashes, playing the part. "Different how, my lord?" He moved closer, each step deliberate. Like fire and lightning, like something wild that refuses to be tamed. His fingers ghosted along my bare arm, raising goosebumps despite my best efforts to remain calm. "What are you hiding, little courtesan?" The touch of his skin against mine sent electricity racing through my veins. I could smell the ancient power in his blood, could feel my magic stirring in response. One taste, just one, and I could shatter every vampire in this cursed place, including him. "Nothing but what you see," I whispered, meeting his gaze. Something flickered in those storm-gray depths. Suspicion. Hunger. A recognition that made my blood run cold. Liar. The word was a caress and a threat. But I do enjoy mysteries. He stepped back, releasing me from whatever spell his proximity had woven. I watched him disappear into the crowd of silk-draped bodies and glittering fangs, my pulse still racing. I'd come here for answers. For Lyra. But as I pressed deeper into the Crimson Court's twisted heart, I began to suspect I'd found something far more dangerous than vampire politics. I'd found my match. The next 3 nights blurred together in a haze of stolen glances and carefully orchestrated encounters. Aric circled me like a predator scenting prey, his attention both thrilling and terrifying. I gathered intelligence between his visits, whispered conversations about the Order's inner circle, fragments of information about their recent acquisitions. None of it led me to Lyra. "You're wasting your time with the others." Aric's voice raced through my frustrated thoughts. I spun around to find him lounging in the doorway of my assigned chambers, looking like sin incarnate in black silk and leather. "I don't know what you mean," I said, though my pulse quickened at his unexpected appearance. He pushed off the doorframe and stalked into my room with predatory grace. "The simpering lords who've been sniffing around you like dogs in heat. They bore you. I can see it in your eyes." Perhaps I prefer boring to dangerous. A smile curved his lips, sharp and promising. Now that's definitely a lie. Before I could retreat, he was there, backing me against the wall with liquid speed. His hands braced either side of my head, caging me in warmth and shadow. "What game are you playing?" he murmured, his breath cool against my throat. I lifted my chin, defiant, despite the way my body responded to his proximity. "The same one you are." "Are you?" His fingers traced the pulse point at my neck, and I bit back a gasp. "Because my game involves finding out exactly what you are, beneath all this silk and perfume." The hunger in his voice made something low in my belly clench tight. This was dangerous territory. Letting him get this close, letting myself want this. But when his thumb brushed across my lower lip, I couldn't stop myself from parting them slightly. His pupils dilated, his fangs extending just enough to catch the candlelight. "There she is," he whispered. "There's the fire I smell on you." The space between us crackled with tension. One kiss. That's all it would take to shatter both our carefully constructed facades. One kiss, and everything would change. A scream tore through the night air. We broke apart instantly. The spell shattered. Aric's head snapped toward the sound, his entire body going rigid with predatory alertness. "Stay here," he commanded, already moving toward the door. Like hell. I waited 3 heartbeats before following, keeping to the shadows as chaos erupted throughout the sanctuary. Vampires scattered like startled ravens, their voices a cacophony of excitement and bloodlust. I tracked the scent of fresh blood and terror through winding corridors until I found its source, a stone chamber deep beneath the main hall. What I saw there made my magic surge with such violent fury that cracks appeared in the walls around me. Lyra hung suspended in silver chains, her dark hair matted with blood. But it was her eyes that made my world tilt sideways. No longer the warm brown I'd known since childhood, but the hungry crimson of a newly turned vampire. "Sister," she whispered, her voice carrying that otherworldly resonance that marked the transformed. Rage exploded through me like liquid fire. Magic crackled along my skin, sending loose stones tumbling from the ceiling. I stepped into the chamber, power rolling off me in waves that made the very air shimmer. "Let her go." The voice that answered wasn't Lyra's. It was his, low and amused and utterly without surprise. I was wondering when the bloodmage would finally show herself. I spun around to find Aric standing in the doorway, no longer playing at being just another vampire lord. Power emanated from him in suffocating waves, ancient, terrible, and completely focused on me. "You knew," I breathed, "from the moment you walked into my territory." He moved into the chamber, seemingly unconcerned by the magic that had reduced stone to powder. "Did you really think you could hide what you are from me? I can smell the lightning in your veins, little witch." My hands shook with the effort of containing my power. "You're him. You're the one who took her." Something that might have been regret flickered across his features. "I am." "Why?" "Because she was bait." His storm gray eyes never left mine. "For you." The words hit me like a gut punch. All of this, Lyra's disappearance, my desperate infiltration, every moment of connection I'd felt with him, it had all been orchestrated. "You bastard." Magic erupted from me in a torrent of silver fire, but Aric moved like smoke, avoiding the worst of it while closing the distance between us. "Careful, little blood mage. Destroy me and you'll never save her." He caught my wrists as I lashed out, his grip like steel. "The transformation has already begun. She has perhaps an hour before the change becomes irreversible." I went still, my magic guttering like a candle in the wind. "What do you want?" "A trade." His thumbs traced circles over my pulse points, and I hated how my body responded even now. "Your power for her mortality, your service for her freedom." "My service?" His smile was all predator. "You bind yourself to me. Body, magic, soul. In return, I reverse what was done to your sister and let you both walk away." I stared at him, searching for deception in those winter storm eyes. "You can do that? Reverse a turning?" "I'm older than you can imagine, Soraya Valin. There are magics I command that would make your blood spell seem like a child's cantrip." The sound of my real name on his lips sent shivers down my spine. "How long have you known who I was?" "Long enough." He released one of my wrists to trace the line of my jaw. Long enough to plan this. Long enough to realize I don't just want your power. What else could you possibly want? His answer was a whisper against my lips. You. The kiss that followed was everything I'd imagined and nothing I was prepared for. Fire and ice, silk and steel, promise and threat all wrapped into one devastating moment. He kissed me like he was claiming something that already belonged to him, like he was sealing a bargain written in blood and starlight. When we broke apart, I was breathless and burning. Choose, he said simply. I looked at Lyra, hanging limp in her chains, her humanity slipping away with each passing second. Then I looked at the vampire who'd orchestrated this elaborate trap, who'd made me feel things I'd sworn never to feel again. I choose her, I whispered. I choose her freedom. Something that might have been disappointment flickered across his features. Even knowing what it will cost you. Even knowing. He nodded once, then spoke words in a language that predated human civilization. Power rushed through the chamber like a hurricane wind, and I felt the magical bonds settle around me like chains made of shadow and desire. The binding was complete. I belonged to him now, as surely as if he'd carved his name into my soul. Aric moved to Lyra with swift efficiency, placing his hands on her face and speaking more of those ancient words. Light blazed between his palms, and I watched in fascination and horror as the crimson faded from my sister's eyes, replaced by their familiar warm brown. She sagged in her chains, mortal once more, but breathing. It's done, Aric said, turning back to me. She's free to go. I rushed to Lyra's side, using magic to shatter her silver bonds. She was weak but alive, her pulse steady beneath my fingers. Sister? Her voice was hoarse but blessedly human. How did you... Later, I whispered, helping her to her feet. We need to get you out of here. But as I turned toward the doorway, Aric's voice stopped me cold. Your sister leaves. You stay. I met his gaze, seeing my reflection in those storm-gray depths. That was the bargain. Soraya, no. Lyra's fingers clutched at my arm. Don't do this for me. I kissed her forehead, pouring every ounce of love I felt into the gesture. Go. Exist. Be happy. I won't leave you. You will. I infused the words with just enough magical compulsion to override her protests. Walk away and don't look back. She fought the compulsion for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. I watched her leave, my heart breaking and healing simultaneously. She was safe. That was what mattered. When her footsteps faded, Aric and I were alone in the chamber that had become my prison. Any regrets? He asked. I considered the question, weighing the loss of my freedom against my sister's life. None. Good. He moved closer, and I felt the pull of our new bond like gravity. Because I meant what I said. I don't just want your power, Soraya. I want all of you. Then you'll have to earn it. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, but I refused to show weakness. A binding may make me yours, but it doesn't make me willing. His laugh was low and rich. I wouldn't want you willing. Where's the fun in that? He reached for me, and I didn't resist when he pulled me against him. The bond hummed between us, electric and demanding. I felt his pulse beneath my palms, smelled the ancient power in his blood. What happens now? I whispered. Now we learn to dance with darkness. His lips brushed my throat, sending fire racing through my veins. Now we discover just how much pleasure can coexist with danger. I tilted my head back, giving him access to the pulse point he'd traced so carefully before. And if I decide to kill you in your sleep, then I'll die happy. His fangs scraped against my skin, a promise and a threat. But somehow I doubt it will come to that. The first taste of his bite was ecstasy and agony combined. Power flooded through me as his ancient blood hit my system, my magic responding with violent enthusiasm. But there was something else, a connection deeper than binding, more intimate than blood. I felt his hunger, his desire, the centuries of loneliness that had driven him to such elaborate lengths to claim me. And underneath it all, something I hadn't expected. Hope. When he finally released me, I swayed on my feet, drunk on power and possibility. The Crimson Order won't approve of this arrangement, I managed. Let them disapprove. His eyes glowed with predatory satisfaction. I've waited 200 years for a blood mage to call my own. They can go to hell. I should have been terrified. Should have been planning my escape, calculating my chances of breaking the binding. Instead, I found myself wondering what it would be like to surrender to this dangerous dance we'd begun. 200 years, I repeated. You've been planning this for 200 years? Planning, hoping, dreaming. He traced the bite marks on my throat with reverent fingers. Blood mages are nearly extinct. Finding you was like discovering a star fallen to earth. The poetry in his words made something inside me soften, despite every instinct screaming danger. And if I disappoint you? Impossible. His certainty was absolute. You're already everything I imagined and more. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes, searching for deception and finding only hunger. For my power, yes, but also for me, the woman beneath the magic. This is insane, I whispered. The best things always are. Before I could respond, he was kissing me again, and this time I kissed him back. The bond between us flared to life, and I felt our futures intertwining like vines around a trellis. Dark, dangerous, and utterly inescapable. When we finally broke apart, breathless and burning, I realized the truth that would define everything that followed. I might be bound to him by magic and bargains, but he was equally ensnared by me. The predator had become prey, and the prey had become predator. And in that perfect, terrifying balance, I found something I'd thought lost forever. I found home. 3 months later, a letter arrived with the dawn, carried by a raven whose eyes glowed red in the morning light. I recognized the handwriting before I broke the wax seal, my heart clenching with sudden dread. Soraya, I need to see you. There's something you need to know about what happened that night. Something Aric never told you. Come alone. The old oak grove where we used to practice magic as children. Midnight tonight. Please, I'm running out of time. Lyra. I read the letter 3 times, each pass making my unease grow. Something about the phrasing felt wrong. Too formal, too careful, but it was definitely Lyra's handwriting, and the grove she mentioned held memories only we shared. Bad news? Aric's voice was sleep-rough as he emerged from the shadows of our shared chambers. 3 months of being bound to him had taught me to read his moods in the set of his shoulders, the way he moved through space. Right now, every line of his body screamed predator on alert. A letter from my sister. I showed him the parchment, watching his expression carefully. She wants to meet. Something flickered across his features, too quick for me to interpret. After 3 months of silence? She needed time to process everything that happened. Did she? His tone was carefully neutral, but I caught the edge beneath it. And what did she need to process exactly? I studied his face, noting the tightness around his eyes. "What aren't you telling me?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he moved to the window, his silhouette stark against the morning sky. "There's something about that night. Something I should have told you before now." Ice formed in my veins. "What?" "The reversal." He spoke without turning around, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "It's not permanent." The words tore through me, twisting my gut. "What do you mean, not permanent?" "The magic I used, it can delay a turning, even reverse the immediate effects. But if the new vampire doesn't feed within a specific time frame, the hunger returns, stronger than before." I stared at his rigid back, betrayal burning through me like acid. "How long?" 3 months. He finally turned to face me, and I saw genuine regret in his storm gray eyes. "Give or take a few days." The letter crumpled in my fist. "She's turning again. That's what this is about." "Most likely. You knew this would happen." My magic rose, responding to my fury. "You knew she'd need to feed or die, and you said nothing." "I hoped..." "You hoped what?" "That I'd be so grateful for a temporary reprieve that I wouldn't care when she died anyway?" Power crackled along my skin, making the air shimmer with heat. "Or did you want her to turn? Did you want both Valen sisters under your control?" His jaw tightened. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" I stepped closer, my magic pressing against the bonds that held me to him. They strained but held. They always held. "Tell me the truth, Aric. For once in your immortal existence, tell me the goddamn truth." The truth is complicated. His own power rose to meet mine, and the room filled with the ozone scent of clashing magic. The truth is that I bound myself to you as surely as I bound you to me, and every decision I've made since then has been colored by that reality. That's not an answer. "No," he agreed. "It's not." We stared at one another across 3 feet of charged air, both of us balanced on the knife's edge of a violence and desire that had defined our relationship from the beginning. Finally, I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my bodice. "I'm going to meet her." "Alone?" Danger threaded through his voice. "That's exactly what someone would expect if they wanted to trap you." "Someone like who?" "Like the Crimson Order members who've been remarkably quiet since I claimed you." He moved closer, his presence filling my awareness. "Like vampire lords who might see your sister's situation as an opportunity to strike at me through you." I considered this, my anger warring with pragmatism. He had a point. My disappearance had caused ripples throughout the supernatural community, and not everyone was pleased with Aric's acquisition of a bloodmage. "Then come with me," I said finally. "But stay hidden unless I need you." Something that might have been relief flickered across his features. "Agreed." "And Aric?" I met his eyes, letting him see the promise of retribution there. "We're going to finish our conversation about your lies when this is over." His smile was sharp as a blade. "I'm looking forward to it." The oak grove felt different at midnight, older, wilder, heavy with the kind of magic that predated human civilization. I stood in the circle of ancient trees, every sense heightened, waiting for Lyra to appear. The scent hit me first. Blood and hunger and something else that made my magic recoil in recognition. When she stepped out of the shadows, I barely recognized the woman who'd once been my sister. Lyra's transformation had progressed beyond anything Aric's magic could reverse. Her eyes were the deep crimson of an ancient vampire, her skin pale as moonlight, her movements liquid with inhuman grace. But it was the cruel smile on her lips that told me everything I needed to know about who and what she'd become. "Hello, sister." Her voice carried harmonics that made my bones ache. "You look bound." I kept my expression neutral despite the sick dread churning in my stomach. "Lyra, how are you feeling?" Her laugh rang out like silver bells. Alive. For the first time in my mortal existence, I feel truly alive. The hunger came back. Oh, it never left. She circled me slowly, predator assessing prey. "Did you really think your vampire lord's magic could undo what he'd begun?" He said he reversed the turning. He delayed it. There's a difference. She stopped in front of me, close enough that I could see the inhuman intelligence burning in her crimson gaze. "But you know that now, don't you? You know he lied to you." I said nothing, but my silence was answer enough. "The great Aric Nerezza," Lyra continued, her voice dripping mockery. "Lord of the Crimson Order, master manipulator. Did you really think his interest in you was romantic? I know what it was. Do you?" She tilted her head, studying me with unsettling intensity. "Because I don't think you understand the full scope of his deception." Despite every instinct screaming danger, I had to ask, "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that he didn't just want a blood mage, Soraya. He wanted the blood mage, the last one, the most powerful witch of her generation." Her smile was razor sharp. "He wanted you specifically, and he was willing to destroy everything and everyone you cared about to get you." The words wounded every speck of humanity within me, and I shouted, "No." "Oh yes. Your capture wasn't some grand romantic gesture born of centuries of longing. It was a calculated acquisition. He's been watching you for years, learning your weaknesses, planning exactly how to trap you." She leaned closer, her breath cold against my ear. "And the most beautiful part? He made you choose it, made you walk willingly into his cage because you thought you were saving me." "Stop." My magic flared, responding to my distress. "But here's the thing he didn't count on," Lyra continued, ignoring the power crackling around us. "When he sired me that night, he didn't just create a vampire. He created a connection, a bond that links all three of us in ways he never imagined." I stared at her, understanding dawning like a cold sunrise. "You're his progeny, among other things." Her eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. "Which means I know exactly what he's thinking, what he's feeling. And right now he's terrified that I'm going to tell you the truth about why he really chose you. Which is not because he loves you, not because he's been searching for you for 200 years, because his power is failing." She spoke the words like a death sentence. "The Crimson Order is fracturing. His enemies are growing bold, and he needs a blood mage's power to maintain his position. You're not his beloved Soraya. You're his weapon." The revelation shouldn't have hurt. I'd known from the beginning that our relationship was built on necessity and mutual benefit. But somewhere over the past 3 months, I'd begun to believe that what grew between us might be real. "Even if that's true," I said carefully, "it doesn't change anything. I'm bound to him." "Are you?" Lyra's smile was triumphant. "Because binding magic works both ways, and I happen to know his true name. His real name, from before he became Lord Aric Nerezza." My heart stopped. A vampire's true name was the key to their destruction and their salvation. With it, I could break any binding, command any obedience. "Why would you tell me that?" "Because I want to give you a choice. The real choice he never offered." She pulled a silver dagger from the folds of her cloak, its blade etched with symbols that made my magic sing. "Kill him. Take his power for yourself. Free us both from his manipulations. I stared at the weapon, feeling the weight of possibility. With Aric's power added to my own, I could reshape the supernatural world. I could make vampires fear blood mages again. "What's his name?" I whispered. Lyra's smile widened, revealing fangs sharp as razors. Kaithran Vel Sahara. He was a foot soldier in the vampire wars, nothing more. Everything else, the title, the power, the legend, built on lies and careful cultivation. The name resonated through my magic like a bell, and I felt the truth of it in my bones. She wasn't lying. Sister. Lyra pressed the dagger into my hands. "Let me give you back your freedom." I looked upon the blade, then up at the woman who'd once been my everything. "And what do you get out of this? What do you mean? If I kill Aric, his progeny dies with him. You know this." I tilted my head, studying her face. "Unless that's not really what you want." For the first time since she'd appeared, uncertainty flickered across her features. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." I turned the dagger over in my hands, noting the way its edge caught moonlight. "I think you've discovered that being a vampire suits you. I think you like the power, the immortality, the freedom from human weakness. And I think you're terrified that if Aric dies, you'll lose all of that. That's not... But you also know that as long as he lives, you're bound to him, subject to his will, his commands." Understanding crystallized like ice in my veins. "You don't want me to kill him, Lyra. You want me to claim him, to take his place as your sire." Her composure cracked, revealing the desperate hunger beneath. Would that be so terrible? We could rule together, like we always dreamed. You and me against the world. I looked at my sister, my beautiful, lost, monstrous sister, and felt my heart break all over again. We're not children anymore, Lyra, and some dreams become nightmares when they come true. So you'll stay with him? Even knowing what he really is? I weighed the dagger in my hands, considering all my options. Kill Aric and lose the woman who'd raised me. Spare him and remain bound to a creature who saw me as a weapon first and a woman second. Or, there is another option, I said slowly. Before Lyra could react, I spun around and hurled the silver blade with deadly precision. It flew through the air like a shooting star, aimed not at the shadows where I could sense Aric waiting, but at the ground between us. The dagger embedded itself in the earth with a resonant chime, its magic spreading outward in concentric circles. Ancient wards activated, trapping all three of us within the grove until sunrise. Clever, Aric said as he emerged from the darkness. His storm-gray eyes found mine across the confined space. Though I'm curious about your endgame. Simple. I crossed my arms, facing both vampires with equal measures of defiance and determination. We're going to have a conversation, all three of us, and nobody leaves until we've sorted out this tangled mess of lies and half-truths. Lyra hissed, her fangs fully extended. You have no idea what you're doing. Don't I? I let the power crackle along my skin, not enough to break the wards, but enough to remind them both exactly what I was capable of. I'm a blood mage bound to the most powerful vampire in the region, connected to his progeny through bonds of blood and magic. I think I have a better understanding of this situation than either of you realize. Aric's lips curved in what might have been admiration. And what conversation did you have in mind? The one where you tell me the complete truth about why you chose me. Not the romantic fiction you've been peddling, not the pragmatic explanation about needing a weapon. The real reason. I looked between them, seeing my own reflection in 4 inhuman eyes. Because I think all 3 of us are tired of living in each other's shadows. The truth, Aric repeated softly. Are you sure you want it? I want it all. Every lie, every manipulation, every moment of genuine feeling buried beneath layers of necessity. I raised my chin, meeting his gaze without flinching. And when you're done, I'll tell you both what I've decided to do about it. The night stretched ahead of us, heavy with possibility and threat. The wards pulsed around us like a heartbeat, silver light threading through the ancient oaks as dawn still lingered hours away. 3 predators trapped in a cage of my own making, with nothing but truth and time between us and whatever came next. Aric stood motionless as carved marble, his storm gray eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin burn. Even now, even knowing what I knew, my body responded to his presence like iron to a magnet. The bond between us hummed with frustrated energy, demanding contact, demanding surrender. I refused to give it either. You want the truth? His voice carried centuries of weariness. Then let me give you all of it. Lyra shifted restlessly at the edge of the circle, her crimson gaze flicking between us like a spectator at some blood sport. She'd orchestrated this confrontation, but now that it was happening, uncertainty flickered across her marble-perfect features. I've been watching you for longer than you know, Soraya. Aric began to pace, his movements liquid grace contained within our magical prison. Not 200 years, 500. That's impossible. Is it? How old do you think blood mages live when left to their natural lifespan? His smile was sharp as winter. Your grandmother lived to be 312. Your great-grandmother made it to 406 before the vampire wars claimed her. I stared at him, the implications crashing over me in waves. You knew them. I served under your great-grandmother during the Crimson Rebellion. She was magnificent. His eyes went distant with memory. Terrifying and beautiful and powerful enough to level cities with a thought. When she died, something in the balance shifted. The blood mages went into hiding, their numbers dwindling with each generation. So you've been what? Collecting us like rare books? I've been attempting to preserve what's left. The raw honesty in his voice made my chest tighten despite everything. Do you know how many blood mages remain in the world, Soraya? 7. 7 in all the earth. And most of those are children, untrained and unaware of what they carry. 7. The number echoed in my head. But you, he continued, his gaze burning into mine. You're different. Your power doesn't just run deep, it runs pure, undiluted by centuries of crossbreeding with humans. You're what your kind was meant to be. A weapon, I said flatly. A goddess. The words came out rough, almost reverent. And yes, if necessary, the most devastating weapon ever created. Lyra laughed, the sound like breaking glass. How romantic. Tell her the rest, Aric. Tell her about the prophecy. Something cold slithered down my spine. What prophecy? Aric shot Lyra a look that promised retribution, but she'd already committed to burning everything down around us. The one that says a blood mage of the old bloodlines will either save the vampire race or destroy it utterly, my sister said with malicious glee. The one that's had the Crimson Order in chaos for the past century. I felt the blood drain from my face. You're saying I'm some kind of chosen one? I'm saying you're the fulcrum on which our entire world balances. Aric's voice was barely above a whisper, and everyone knows it. The weight of that revelation settled on my shoulders like lead. Every vampire lord who'd circled me at court, every careful conversation, every moment of what I'd thought was genuine interest. All of it filtered through political calculation and supernatural prophecy. "So the binding," I said slowly, working through the implications. "It wasn't just about claiming me as a weapon. It was about making sure I couldn't be turned against you. Among other things." "What other things?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a vulnerability I'd never heard from him before. "It was about making sure that when you came into your full power, when you became what you're destined to become, you wouldn't be alone." His eyes met mine, and I saw centuries of loneliness reflected there. It was about ensuring that the last great blood mage would have someone who understood what it meant to carry that kind of burden. The sincerity in his words made something crack open in my chest. Despite everything, the lies, the manipulation, the calculated orchestration of my sister's transformation, there was truth here. Raw and painful and completely at odds with the careful game I thought we'd been playing. "You bastard," I whispered. "You absolute bastard." "Soraya, no." I held up a hand, power crackling around my fingers. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to make this about nobility and sacrifice and protecting me from some cosmic burden. You turned my sister into a monster to manipulate me into your bed. I turned your sister because she was dying." The words came out like a whip crack. She had maybe 3 days left when I found her in that alley, beaten and bleeding and abandoned by the very humans she'd spent her life trying to save. The world tilted sideways. "What?" "Tell her," Aric commanded, his gaze fixed on Lyra. My sister's composure finally cracked, revealing the frightened girl beneath the vampire's perfection. "It wasn't supposed to happen that way," she whispered. "I was supposed to be bait, nothing more. A lure to draw you out of hiding." What happened in that alley? The men I was supposed to meet, they weren't just interested in information about blood mages. They wanted to know if our blood really could grant immortality to humans. Her voice broke. They decided to find out firsthand. Ripples of horror crashed over me. "Oh, Lyra." "They would have killed her," Aric said quietly, slowly, painfully, "and then they would have come for you with whatever knowledge they'd carved out of her. So you turned her to save her life. I turned her to save both your lives." His jaw tightened. "And yes, because I knew it would bring you to me. I'm not going to pretend otherwise." I stared between them, attempting to process the layers of truth and deception, sacrifice and manipulation. Nothing was as simple as I'd thought. Nothing was as clean as I'd wanted it to be. "The 3 months," I said finally. "The time limit on the reversal. That was real?" "Real, but not inevitable." He moved closer, testing the edges of my patience. "I could have made it permanent. Should have, maybe. But I wanted to give you both the choice." "What choice?" "Live as human and mortal, with all the vulnerability that it entails, or embrace what you've become and claim the power that comes with it." His eyes found Lyra's. She chose power. "And now she's bound to you forever." "Not forever." His voice carried weights I couldn't interpret. "Progeny bonds can be transferred, under the right circumstances." Understanding hit me like lightning. "To me. If you wanted, if you chose to claim her." He was so close enough that I felt the heat radiating from his skin, could smell the complex scent of ancient magic and barely leashed desire. "You could be her sire, her anchor, her family in ways that transcend blood." The offer hung between us, heavy with consequence. Take on the responsibility for my sister's immortal soul, Accept her as my progeny, my creation, my eternal burden and joy. What would that mean for us? I asked. For whatever this is between you and me? It would mean you'd be bound to me not just by magical compulsion, but by choice, by family, by the kind of connection that makes two people choose one another again and again, across centuries and conflicts and all the small betrayals that come with loving someone immortal. His words smacked me, each one stripping away another layer of the armor I'd built around my heart. Love, I repeated. Is that what we're calling this? I'm calling it exactly what it is. He reached for me slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his fingers traced the line of my jaw with reverence. I'm calling it the reason I've waited 500 years. The reason I orchestrated an elaborate scheme to bring you into my world instead of simply taking what I wanted by force. And what did you want? Everything. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I felt the bond between us flare to life. Your power, your presence, your brilliant, stubborn, magnificent soul. All of it. Even knowing I might destroy you? Especially knowing that. His smile was all predator and promise. Do you think I'd settle for a woman who couldn't unmake me if she chose? The arrogance of it should have infuriated me. Instead, it sent heat racing through my veins like wildfire. This was what I'd been fighting. Not just the binding, not just the manipulation, but the terrible, irresistible pull toward a creature who saw my power and didn't flinch, who wanted my darkness as much as my light. Soraya. Lyra's voice interrupted the moment. He's still lying to you. I turned toward my sister, seeing the desperation in her crimson eyes. About what? The prophecy. He didn't tell you all of it. She moved to the edge of the circle, pressing against the barriers of my magic. A blood mage of the old bloodlines will either save the vampire race or destroy it utterly. But there's more. Dread pooled in my stomach. What more? She'll do it through love. Lyra's smile was bitter as winter. The prophecy says she'll choose salvation or destruction based on whether she finds true love or suffers ultimate betrayal. Everything, the careful courtship, the romantic tension, the way he'd made me feel chosen and cherished and desired, all of it filtered through the lens of cosmic manipulation. Is that true? I asked Aric without turning around. Yes. The simple admission cut deeper than any elaborate justification could have. So this has all been about the prophecy, making me love you so I'll choose to save your people instead of destroying them. No. His voice was rough with something that might have been pain. It started that way. I won't lie to you about that. But somewhere along the way, the prophecy stopped mattering. When? When I realized I'd rather face annihilation at your hands than salvation without you in it. I spun around to face him, searching his expression for deception and finding only raw, devastating honesty. That's not how prophecies work, I said weakly. Isn't it? He stepped closer, close enough that I felt his breath against my lips. Prophecies are just possibilities, Soraya. Paths the future might take based on choices not yet made. And I'm choosing you, not the blood mage, not the weapon, not the salvation of my people. You. Even if it means the end of everything you've built. Especially then. The sincerity in his voice made my knees weak. This was the moment. The choice that would define not just our future, but the fate of entire species. Save or destroy. Love or betrayal. I reached up and cupped his face in my hands, feeling the sharp line of his cheekbones beneath my palms. You magnificent, manipulative, impossible man. Is that a yes? Instead of answering, I pulled him down and kissed him. The moment our lips met, the world exploded into sensation. 500 years of longing poured through the bond between us, mixing with my own desperate need until I couldn't tell where my desire ended and his began. His hands fisted in my hair, holding me against him like he was afraid I might disappear, and I pressed closer, wanting to crawl inside his skin and make a home there. When we finally broke apart, both of us were breathless. "The binding," I whispered against his lips. "I want it gone." Soraya. And not because I want to leave, because I want to choose this, choose you, choose us. I met his eyes, letting him see every atom of determination in my soul. "Speak the words, Aric. Set me free so I can bind myself to you." For a moment, he just stared at me. Then his hands moved to frame my face, and he spoke words in the ancient tongue, words that made my magic sing and the bonds around my soul dissolve. The freedom was intoxicating, but it lasted only a heartbeat before I was weaving new bonds, choosing my own chains, binding myself to him with magic that tasted of starlight and promises. "And Lyra?" I asked when the spell was complete. "Already yours," he said softly. "She has been since the moment you chose to save her life over your own freedom." I turned to look at my sister, seeing her clearly for the first time since this all began. Still beautiful, still dangerous, but also still fundamentally the girl who'd taught me to braid flowers in my hair and chase fireflies through summer nights. "Are you going to be able to live with this?" I asked her. "All of it? I'm going to learn to." Her smile was tentative but real. "Besides, someone needs to keep you two from destroying the world with your dramatic love affair." Aric laughed, the sound rich and warm and completely free. "I think we can manage that." I looked around at the circle of ancient oaks, at the ward still holding us in place until dawn, at the two immortal creatures who'd become my family in the strangest possible way. "So what happens now?" "Now," Aric said, pulling me against his side, "we figure out how to rewrite prophecy through the radical act of choosing one another." "And if we fail?" His smile was pure predator. "Then we'll burn beautifully together." As the first hints of dawn touched the sky, I felt the wards weakening. But before they dissolved completely, I made my final choice. "Lyra." My voice carried the authority of a true sire now, and she turned to me with eyes that held both hope and trepidation. "Come here." She approached slowly, and I placed my hands on either side of her face, much as Aric had done to me moments before. But this time, the magic that flowed between us was warm with acceptance, glowing with the silver fire of chosen family. "I claim you," I whispered, pouring love and forgiveness and unbreakable protection into the words. Not as punishment, not as burden, but as sister, as blood of my blood, choice of my choice. The progeny bond shifted, settling around us both like silk. I felt Lyra's relief, her gratitude, her fierce joy at finally belonging somewhere again. And underneath it all, the solid certainty that she would never again be alone or afraid or lost. When I released her, tears tracked down her marble cheeks. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank yourself. You chose to fight for us both tonight." I brushed the wetness away with gentle fingers. "That's what family does." Aric's arms came around me from behind, and I leaned into his warmth as the three of us watched the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "The Crimson Order won't be pleased," he murmured against my hair. "Let them come." I felt my power humming beneath my skin, stronger now with Lyra's connection anchoring it, wilder with my freely chosen bonds to the vampire lord who'd become my everything. I'm done hiding what I am. And what exactly are you? Lyra asked with a smile that finally reached her eyes. I considered the question, feeling the weight of prophecy and destiny and 500 years of careful manipulation settling on my shoulders like a crown. But underneath all that cosmic significance was something simpler, truer, infinitely more powerful. I'm home, I said simply. The wards dissolved with the sunrise, freeing us to step into whatever future we'd chosen to create. And as we walked away from the ancient grove, vampire lord, bloodmage, and the sister who bound us together, I felt the prophecy reshaping itself around our decision. Salvation, not through the sacrifice of love, but through its fierce, defiant celebration. The vampire race would survive. Not because I'd been manipulated into saving them, but because I'd chosen a vampire to love. Because I'd claimed his progeny as my own. Because I'd decided that some things were worth preserving, worth fighting for, worth building a future around. The Crimson Court could keep their politics and their schemes. We had something infinitely more dangerous. We had one another. And that, I thought as Aric's fingers intertwined with mine and Lyra's laughter rang through the morning air, was more than enough to change the world.